Hey there, gang. Today we are learning all about sex. That's right. This is our second lesson about cell growth, and today we're going to be learning about two types of reproduction. So, this is what you should be able to accomplish by the end of this lecture. All right, you should all be able to explain and differentiate between sexual and asexual production, okay? And this is how you're going to be able to do it, right? If we follow these steps, you're all going to be able to do this by the end of class. So, this is a quick recap of what we covered last Thursday. Okay, as an organism grows, the cells inside of this organism are constantly growing, dividing, and dying. Okay, growing, dividing, and dying. And if you guys recall, when a cell's optimum size is reached, the cell divides into two smaller cells. All right? The larger the cell, the more nutrients that must enter the cell, and the more waste that must exit the cell. And we use this example, right? If we think of a cell as a city where nutrients and waste travel on a two-lane main road, right? And remember, the larger the city, the more traffic. And this is why cells need to divide, right? Because they want to be small. Less traffic, okay? And so to prevent this main road from being too bogged down in traffic, cells divide into smaller cells. Okay, so that is what we learned last time. And again, we can see right here exactly what's going on, right? As a cell increases in size, what's going to happen is that it eventually splits into two cells. Okay, so this now what we're going to be talking about is going way, way farther back in our learning. So if you can recall from earlier this year, there are actually two types of organisms. There's our organisms called prokaryotes, and there's organisms called eukaryotes. Okay, so we have two types. If you recall, prokaryotes are very small and are usually single-celled. Okay, this is very important. And if you look here to our right, you can actually see prokaryotes. Okay. Examples include things like bacteria and protists. Okay, so stuff like bacteria basically is what a prokaryote would be. Okay, and you can see it right there. Single-celled, that's the key. Single-celled. okay? Eukaryotes are often larger organisms, okay, and are usually multicellular. And if you guys recall what multi means, right, more than one. Okay, so when you think of multicellular organisms, okay, here's some examples of eukaryotes. Okay, fish, plants, us, we are eukaryotes. Okay, one additional difference between these types of organisms is how they have sex. Okay, so prokaryotes, they generally engage in what's called asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction is when there is only one parent. Okay, there's only one parent. You wouldn't have a mom and a dad, you only have one parent. The organism does not need to have sex to reproduce. If you look here to the right, you'll see that we have our parent. And this parent just divides into two daughter cells, okay? Okay, so asexual organisms, you should also note, they are not male or female, okay? These organisms are not different genders. Okay, there's no different parts, they're not different genders. That's why I'm saying that there's just one parent, okay? It's not one mom, it's not one dad, it's just there's one parent cell, okay? And so what happens when this organism goes from the parent into these cells is that the parent actually makes an exact clone of itself, okay? So no sex actually occurs, and the offspring is actually genetically and physically identical to its parent, okay? So it looks the same on inside and outside. All right. And genetics, right? Anytime we talk about the word genetics, because I think you guys know what physically identical means. Okay, but this word genetically, all right, that means something a little bit different. Whenever you hear the word genetics, it's referring to DNA. Okay, in asexual organisms, the offspring has the same DNA as its parent. Okay, and remember, DNA contains the body's code. Every protein the body makes, anything that has to do with growth or hormones, it all is produced from DNA. Okay, so if it has the same DNA, it's going to look the same, it's going to act very similar, right? It's going to have the same body processes. So it all starts there. In an asexual reproduction, again, this is really important, it's genetically and physically identical. Okay? Now, eukaryotes generally engage in sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, there are two parents, okay? One female and one male. And if you guys look here, you see how you have two different parents. they engage in sex, and they eventually produce offspring, okay? So this is the formal definition of sex here. Okay, and we consider this to be the method of reproduction where a male's sperm fuses with a female's egg. Okay, and this is generally what happens. Sometimes you hear the word gamete, but for our purposes, think of sex as this process where the male's sperm fuses with a female's egg. Okay? So, in order for offspring to actually be produced, the male and female need to have sex. Okay? This is very different than asexual organisms. Okay? And of course, right, when there's two parents involved, what we're going to see is that these offspring, they have a mixture of DNA, right? Because they're getting some from dad, some from mom, okay? That is the offspring is not a genetic clone here. Right? Different than asexual reproduction for sure, right? And this causes the offspring to be genetically and physically different than either parent, okay? And once again, genetic refers to DNA, okay? In sexual organisms, the offspring has different DNA than its parent, okay? So, by the end of this lecture, hopefully you guys can tell the difference between asexual organisms, which are generally prokaryotes, and sexual organisms, which are generally eukaryotes. Remember, prokaryotes are single-celled, and they just make clones of themselves. And eukaryotes, they need to find a partner, have sex, and actually make an offspring that is a unique, different organism. Okay, so fill this out, and then you guys have a partner work to work on. All right, thanks so much for listening.